We'll hang out. We're joined again by Chris Waters and Tim Heyl with Waters International and the Heyl Group. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here again.
Yeah, awesome.
Always a pleasure, Nick.
Oh yeah, anytime, guys. Anytime. You're a real pleasure. So you give the people what they want. And that's what we like over here. So just keep giving the people what they want. Katie, let's start it off here.
Okay, so I'm excited today to ask you a couple questions. As I've been meeting with more and more agents, a number of these questions have been coming up. So I'm really happy to have you two here to answer those directly from the horse's mouth. So my first question is, say you've been lead genning. You're a brand new agent and you're on the phone every day making the calls, but you're having a really hard time staying the course and you're getting a little frustrated with your conversion and just your lack of progress early on, because as we all know, it's a cycle and it's going to take time to mature. What types of advice or tips do you have to just really stay the course and be able to kind of top grade your lead generation experience?
Chris, why don't you go first and I'll answer second.
Okay, so the first thing that I would recommend to anybody that's a new agent is to get laser focused on lead conversion. And so that means you need to go to classes or you need to read books, whatever it is, role play with other agents, write down the objections you're getting, for example, and call me or Tim or call other agents and find a way to overcome those objections so you don't get marbles in your mouth. And with that being said, the only way you're going to stay focused on lead conversion is if you outsource some of those tasks that aren't the highest income producing activities. So, for example, when you get a buyer under contract, the contract to close process, you can actually outsource that to a virtual assistant. You pay them a flat fee when the deal closes, and they can help you manage some of the paperwork so that you can really focus on becoming a master of lead conversion. Same on the listing management side. When you go and get a new listing, there's a lot of work you've got to do. You've got to input an MLS, you've got to go check all these third-party websites, set up your lockbox, showing suite, all these various things you have to do. And in the beginning, when you're first starting your business, depending on your cash situation, you might be tempted to not want to spend the money. But if you can make the investment in leveraging yourself and learning to master lead conversion in the beginning, it's going to pay substantially higher dividends in the future, because you're going to accelerate that point of you being able to build your pipeline and future cash flow. So that would be probably the biggest thing I'd recommend is get totally immersed in training and education, working with people like Nick and Katie and other agents in your market, going to some of the seminars, going over scripting and objection handling, like what you do, Katie, and getting totally immersed in that, and maybe step outside your comfort zone, be willing to spend a little bit of money to have an administrative person help you with some of these things like contract close or listing management. Those are going to be the biggest things that help you get where you want to go in the shortest period of time.
Great. And what would you say to somebody who just got into real estate, doesn't have any deals under their belt, or maybe just one or two, and really has all the time to lead generate? What are some types of advice that you could give them to help them kind of stay mentally focused?
All right. So, Chris, you care if I interrupt you here?
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right. So I think first of all, Chris nailed it when he said get outside your comfort zone, right? If you feel comfortable at work all day, you're not moving anywhere. You're not going anywhere. Literally, it takes feeling super uncomfortable day after day after day to push the ball forward. So to somebody that's new in the business, the first thing I would say is perseverance is probably the one quality that separates the highest achievers in our business, in our industry, really in all of sales, the highest achievers from everybody else. Resilience. Basically, somebody who, after every single day of day after day after day of feeling like you're just getting stepped on, like nothing's working, continuing to push forward. And continuing to push forward means continuing to be consistent in lead generation. That's what it means in our business. And so there were days, Katie, where Chris and I both where we would make calls for 8 or 10 hours and feel like we got nothing done that day. Or for me, I would go on like 15 or 20 listing appointments in a week because I would start to get really good at the phone, and I would literally get out there face to face with homeowner after homeowner after homeowner, and just my conversion was probably 1%. I probably went on 100 listing appointments without taking a listing because I didn't know what I was doing. And so it literally felt like I wasn't making any traction. But the first traction that you make is in your skill set. Before you start seeing production happen, profit's at the top, right? Before profit, you're going to see production start to happen. But before you even see production start to happen, you're going to see your skill set and your character start to grow. And so your character is going to grow by continuing to persevere, continuing to get back up. But your skill set's going to grow by failing your way forward, right? Failing your way forward and doing what Chris said, which is going and soaking up every piece of training that you can possibly get. Training for the right things. Not every piece of training you can possibly get, but every piece of training for the right activities, the ones that matter, which in our business, lead generation and listing appointments, right? So you got to learn to close, and closing is a skill. Closing is not the same as being pushy. Closing is a sales technique that has to be learned and developed. And so you're going to get it by going to classes and by failing your way forward. So if you feel like you're constantly failing and every day you come in, you're losing an appointment or you're not getting people to meet with you or whatever it is, that probably means you're actually experiencing the foundation level of growth, which is internally with your character and with your skill set that you have. And then just to echo what Chris said, outsource. You've got to leverage activities. So for me, what I did, and I think what Chris did as well, before we had any money or cash flow to be actually hiring people in-house, we outsourced it. We outsourced to transaction managers. We outsourced to listing managers. We outsourced to, we outsourced to virtual assistants in the Philippines to do administrative tasks. We used My Outdesk to do that. And then, there's other options of, you can literally hire an administrative employee virtually for as low as 60 cents an hour, but you get what you pay for. You can hire all the way up to $6, $7, $8 an hour and find a really, really qualified person to knock out a lot of the tasks that you're not going to be able to do well yourself. So outsourcing the things that are less important under lead generation. And then the last thing I would say is, if you're a new agent in the business or if you're an experienced agent in the business, you've got to know exactly what it is to push the ball forward every day. You've got to know exactly what the daily result that you're going for is. How many leads a day do you expect to add to your pipeline? How many qualified seller nurturers a day do you expect to add to your pipeline? You've got to pick a number and be consistent with that. Or how many listing appointments do you expect to schedule in a day? Whatever your number is, decide what success looks like for you. Consult a coach. Make sure that it's the right. Make sure, and by the way, if you're watching this webinar, consult Katie or Nick, because they are literally trained under Chris and myself to help you work through this. So consult them, figure out what the right metric is to track on a daily basis, and then don't go home until you've completed that metric. When you're at the front part of your business, you've got to put in a lot of work. We talk about building lives worth living, where you're not enslaved to your job, where you're not enslaved to your work. And that's our goal. And yet you've got to put in the time and the effort up front, on the front end, and make sure you're being consistent day after day after day and earn that freedom. That's all
awesome. I got. So if someone is essentially kind of prospecting and lead generating for 8 hours a day, I know you guys did it when you guys just got into the business. How did you guys get through that? Because lead generating, being on the phones for 8 hours a day, doing that over and over can get mentally and emotionally exhausting. So what did you guys do? Did you guys play any games with yourselves? Or did you guys have any tricks that you guys used?
Two things. That's a really great question, Nick. So I did two things personally. The first thing is I became obsessed with visualization. So I visualize, even to this day, every single day, I'm visualizing, and it's not. I don't sit in a corner and meditate like this. I just throughout the day,
just like this.
No, throughout the day, my mind, any free moment I get, I'm constantly thinking about the future. I'm visualizing what my life looks like in the future, what my career looks like, what my business looks like. I'm constantly obsessed with thinking about I imagine what it looks like. And you get, there's a bold law, you get what you deserve in your imagination. I literally become obsessed with imagining my future, and I every day I get closer and closer to that imagination. The other thing I would say, so how that relates to every day when I'm lead genning every single day I'm there, the phone's ringing, I'm on the dialer, my mind is off in la la land, until they answer the phone, I'm envisioning what my business looks like. They get on the phone, and I realize I'm doing this for a short period of time so that I'll never have to do it again. I'm doing, in a short period of time, 3 years, right? I'm doing this for 3 or 4 years so that I'll never have to do it again, because my life is going to look like this. My career is going to look like this. So constantly knowing that there is light at the end of the tunnel if you're consistent. The second thing is that you got to create competition. With lead generation, you got to make it fun. And for me, fun is equal to competitiveness. So I didn't have a team. I didn't have team members and all of that. So what I did was I found local competitors. Chris was one of them. I would go on listing appointments, and Chris would take the listing before I even walked into the freaking house. And I was furious. And it just drove me to want to get better and better and better. And it drove me to want to be on the phones more and to get better skilled and to move faster. And it constantly pushed me because I had a competitor. And Chris wasn't the only one, by the way. There were 3 or 4. Chris just happened to be the one that was friendly, considerate, and humble enough to actually become friends with me. There are all kinds of competitors out there that are pompous and cocky, and also all kinds of other things that is the reason that I'm not in business with them. But it's really funny that when you find a competitor out there in the field, there's a high chance that they're going to be a lot like you, and you can actually use that to fuel your competitive nature and actually make it more fun.
Awesome. Any other questions on that one?
I think that's it. Is there anything you wanted to add to that kind of second-tiered question, Chris?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what Tim mentioned, I can echo a lot of the same things he said. I think the competitive element, if that drives you, that's something you should definitely do. I mean, like Tim mentioned, like if I lost a listing to Tim, like I was gonna work 10 times harder to make sure the next listing I did not lose to that guy. So I mean, it was a good thing. But back to the lead generation, the original question of lead genning, it's like lead genning is not a team sport. It's tough. Like it's a mental game. It's like golf. I mean, it's the only person you can blame is yourself. If you're
not quite as fun as golf, but
yeah, but you know what I mean. Like if you suck at golf, like you can only blame yourself. Same in lead generation. On the phone when you're prospecting and converting, if you can only blame yourself if you're not booking appointments. So it is mentally exhausting. I mean, everything you mentioned, like every day, it was tough, man. It is like a mental battle in your mind, and it's like constant defeat. I mean, I'd make 300 calls in a day and get lucky to convert one appointment, and then I find out that evening that appointment got canceled because they already hired another realtor.
Yep.
So to say it's mentally draining is a massive understatement. So I think Tim and I have a great appreciation for how hard it is and what a big mental game it is. And to echo what Tim said, I mean, what I was constantly doing was I was constantly envisioning the future, and I was thinking about my big why and like the thing that I was really trying to get to. And I knew that if I could stay focused on this long enough, that it would get me to that next step. And so, there were some other things that I could offer as advice. I remember reading a book by Tony Robbins called Awaken the Giant Within. And within the book, like he talks about like when you go through these journeys and they're like super, super hard to get over and overcome. And he says in the book, like you need to like kind of embrace that as a journey. Don't think about it as like
a finish line.
Yeah. Think about it. Like he talked in the book Awaken the Giant about thinking about it like a journey. So I remembered when I was like super frustrated, I'd constantly like go back to that. Like I took a lot of notes through Tony Robbins' books, just to try to like help me like mentally stay the course. And it was kind of like a pseudo coach, if you will, that was reminding me that this is just a part of the journey, and I just need to embrace the journey. And it's gonna suck for a while, but it's gonna get eventually better and better. There's it's kind of like there's there's some analogy. I'm going to totally butcher this, but there's an analogy that like to shoot a rocket into space, like 95% of its energy that it uses is required just to get it off the ground like a couple feet. And it only needs like 4% or 5% of its remaining fuel or energy or whatever to get from a couple feet off the ground into space. And in business and lead generation, that it's very similar. I mean, it's like 95% of all the energy you're going to put into something is mastering this one element of real estate, and it's lead generation. So just embrace the journey, get immersed in books. If you know you don't have anybody to talk to, or you don't have a competitor like Tim, go get yourself immersed in self-help books that can kind of help you mentally.
Yeah, I think that's so wise. And Katie, if you think about when you joined my team, I was probably in my third year.
Mm-hmm.
It probably looked like to you, I mean, you could share your perspective, but it probably looked like we were just cruising. Like we just had a ton of business, right? I mean, you came in after.
You cut out there, Tim.
Oh, am I cutting out? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay. I think they're cutting out, probably.
I see Katie and Nick.
Yeah. Well, we lost Mint Title. I wonder if everybody can still hear us.
I can hear you. Nick and Katie, can you hear us? I don't think they can hear us.
They're out. We should just keep talking. What do you want to talk about, man?
I don't know what else Nick was going to ask us.
Let's talk about the future of the real estate industry.
Okay.
Until they get back. So you were telling me yesterday that you believe that in order for things to really change drastically, in order to go 0 to 1, like we were talking about from that book, you've got to have a 10x difference on what currently exists in the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
we should probably add a caveat to this if people are going to be listening to this. So there's a really great book out there Peter Thiel wrote, and for those of you that don't know who Peter Thiel is, Peter Thiel was involved with Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel really helped Elon Musk make PayPal what it is today. And so Peter Thiel wrote this book called 0 to 1, and it's notes for startups. And kind of the main thesis behind the book is that he defines 0 to 1 as either doing something that's never been done before, or if you're in an industry where the industry has existed before, you need to improve on it by 10x if you really want to make a big difference in the industry and add a tremendous amount of value.
And if you can improve on something by 10x, you stand the chance of becoming a monopoly or as close to a monopoly as possible in that industry. So the question Chris and I keep asking is, what's the thing that would cause the real estate industry to be improved by 10x? And so that's a conversation for a different Google Hangout. But if anybody's interested in hearing more about our thoughts with that, and if you're even interested in masterminding about that, tell Nick and Katie or shoot an email back, and let's organize something to have that conversation, because that's fun. We love talking about that type of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's literally just like a brainstorming session, and it may go somewhere, it may not. There's no like expectations of what it all entails, but just something interesting to talk about, because we're in the service industry. Anything we can do to improve the consumer experience is ultimately going to help each and every one of us on this call and people listening improve and grow their business.
Yeah, so I know you guys both mentioned leveraging certain parts of your business earlier in this hangout, but when you guys were actually in production, what were some of the few things that you guys leveraged in order to help your business continue to grow at the pace that you guys envisioned?
Mm-hmm.
So
I talked to a lot of agents that get too busy to kind of slow down a bit and make some really strategic decisions about their business to ultimately encourage them to do more.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is, number one, make sure you're not trying to solve the wrong problem. It may not be necessarily that you don't have enough time in the day. It could be that you're not disciplined enough to prioritize your day on time block lead generation. So if somebody's at that point where they're telling me they're too busy and they can't lead generate anymore, they should be at a point where they're doing, for example, 10 to 15 listings a month. If you take 10 to 15 listings a month, that's when I would probably tell you, okay, you're probably too busy to lead generate if you're doing 10 to 15 listings a month. Now on the buy side, if you're doing more than 4 to, I'd say 6, probably 8's the max. If you've got more than 8 deals closing in a month on the buy side, then there's probably no way you can lead generate. So there's some certain benchmarks that I found, like for example on the buy side, the absolute pinnacle is 8 clients. I kind of hit my max one month on the buy side. I closed 13 deals in 1 month. It was with 8 different clients. I had one buyer buy 4 properties, so that's how I got to 13. Mm-hmm. So like eight clients closing in a month is like, for me. For somebody else it may be higher, maybe it's less, but for me 8 clients in closing in a month was like absurd, and it started to take away from my lead generation time, and I knew I needed to start to leverage myself. On the listing side, when I started, I would say my so on the listing side for me, I had 1 month where I think I took somewhere between 20 and 25 listings, and there was no way that month I was going to be able to spend 3 hours in the morning lead generating. So I would say 20 to 25 is like at the pinnacle, but truthfully, like 10 to 15 consistently every month, it's going to be really hard to lead generate. So first, make sure you're trying to solve the wrong problem, and it's not a function of you being disciplined and time blocking your schedule for lead generation. So maybe that'll give some people that are listening to the call some benchmarks. If you don't have more than 4 to 6 buyers closing in a month, you should still be able to lead generate. And if you don't have 10 to 15 listings closing, you should still be able to lead generate. Beyond that, I definitely realize like the only way you can lead generate is if you're going to work like 18 hours in a day.
Which is absolutely silly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a great answer. When we talk about leverage, Nick, it's really divided into 3 categories. Leveraging is basically a way to increase efficiency, a way to do more with less time, right? So when we leverage people, systems, and tools. Those are the 3 categories that we would find leverage for. So with the benchmarks Chris gave, you want to ask yourself, do I need a person? Do I need a better system? Or is there a tool that's missing that would help me do my job better? So examples of tools would be a CRM, a place for you to put all your leads and schedule a follow-up call so that you can go to sleep at night knowing that everybody's in there and they'll be there when they need to be called back, rather than a bunch of sticky notes all over the office that are going to get lost that keep you up at night realizing you're missing out. The janitor might have accidentally thrown away an $8,000 piece of paper. All right. So systems or tools like a dialer or a CRM, a dialer so that you don't have to manually dial every phone call, a calendar, data sources that can give you phone numbers like Cole Resource Directory or Vulcan 7. Those are all really good tools that will give you that will help you to be more efficient. Systems like Chris talked about. Time blocking. You could be better utilizing your time by using better systems. I'd recommend reading The One Thing. That's Gary Keller's book on how to be more productive, more personally productive, and that's systems you can implement to go ahead and do that. Forms. We have Katie and Nick. You guys have our listing forms, our listing summaries, our homework packets, our scripts. Every single thing, every single script, form, checklist. Everything, those are all systems that we have at Mint Title that Chris and I have built in our businesses that we're happy to give away. So those are all kinds of good systems there. Just having routine in your day is a system, right? Anything like that is a good system. And then people, you can use to leverage people when you're finally ready. You might not be ready to hire somebody for $50,000 a year on salary with benefits. You might start with a virtual assistant. You could go to My Outdesk. My Outdesk is going to be $6, $7, or $8 an hour, depending on the quality level that you want. You can go to Pam's Consulting. You can hire somebody for $3 an hour from Pam's Consulting if you just have repetitive tasks that need to be done all day, every day. And you can hire those people part-time too, so it ends up only costing you, a couple $100 a month. What I did when I was finally ready to get leverage, I hired a transaction management service, which there's plenty of them in Austin. I'd pay around $400 a deal at closing because I didn't have any money to pay it up front. And I leveraged the contract to close experienced people and the listing managers that were already experienced this. They actually taught me how to do that part of the process. I hadn't sold a house before and I hadn't bought a house before, so I didn't know how to even go through contract to close. And so I just hired it out and then learned from the people I hired it out from. And then finally, when I was ready to hire somebody in-house, I grabbed an agent in my office that wasn't even producing at a high level. I think we lost Chris. So I grabbed an agent in my office that wasn't producing at a high level, and they needed some money. And so I said, why don't you work for me in the mornings? I'll pay you hourly, and then you can go be an agent in the afternoon and do your own thing. And that worked out really, really well for about a year. That worked out really, really well. And I got all my systems management taken care of by this agent. Or by this agent in the market center. So if you've got any friends in the business or independent contractor friends that have a little bit extra time on their hands, you could hire them out. And then the cool part is, what the next step is to hire a showing assistant. So if you know agents that aren't succeeding at a super high level that need some income, you could hire them to go show property for you, because the first thing you want, the first people leverage piece is going to be virtually for contract to close. The second one's going to be in-house. It's going to be to manage all of your systems admin. And the third one is going to be a showing assistant. So your first 3 hires are all administrative related. You don't need to be hiring salespeople to go out and produce until after you've hired an EA, a transaction and listing manager, and finally a showing assistant. And then the goal is that all 3 of those roles have a growth path. So just like you're going to become obsessed with visualizing what your future looks like, you've also, as a business owner now, have to be obsessed with what their future looks like and what their growth path is. So where your EA, your executive assistant, actually has a growth path to turn into your assistant executive, right? Your chief of staff, your right-hand person. Your listing manager has the opportunity to build out a whole administrative department. Your showing assistant can become the buyer's agent and eventually the lead buyer's agent and run your sales team. Right? So by creating those growth paths, by the way, you're building future leverage into your life and into your business as you continue to grow.
Hey, just the one caveat I'd put on all this is, like, everything Tim and I are saying can seem overwhelming if you take all of this in at once. And the book, The One Thing, there's an illustration in the book about these dominoes and how, basically you knock down one domino at a time. And as you knock down a small domino, then it'll be able to knock down a domino slightly bigger. So there's a lot of things we're talking about where you can go and spend money and hiring people, and you may or may not have those resources, but just focus on, like the book The One Thing says, one domino at a time. And don't let some of these shiny objects that we talk about get you distracted. You can use those things as part of that visualization exercise to help you stay motivated when you're trying to persevere through crazy challenges and whatever day-to-day thing you're doing. So, don't, depending on what stage you are in your business, don't let all these things overwhelm you. It's not like you have to go get all these things started tomorrow. And there are cost-effective options depending on, what stage of your business you're in. There are systems Tim and I have that cost thousands of dollars every month. If you're a new agent, you don't need to go spend thousands of dollars. When I was getting started, I think I spent $35 a month on a top producer account, and I think I spent it was like $100 a month on a dialer to be able to make a lot of dials, and I spent money on business cards and I don't know what I'm forgetting here, but it's I was spending very little money, like a couple $100 a month, and I could run my entire business. So use all these big shiny objects we're talking about as maybe a visualization exercise to help motivate you when you've got a day where things are very challenging.
Yeah. And Tim, you just made me think of something. When I started the Heyl group, there's a lot of structure around it. And when I think of systems now, I often think of kind of high-level systems. But there are a lot of little things that I kind of have taken for granted over time. I mean, just scheduling an appointment, how we put an appointment on our calendar, saved me so much time, being able to just click on it on Google Maps, and I have directions there instantly to where I just get in a car and go and don't even need to know where I'm driving, essentially.
Yep.
And just, you know, how to handle the transfer of the client to my listing manager, so that everything was done as efficiently as possible with certain scripts in place and just certain expectations that are echoed throughout the transaction. Those are all systems, and honestly, I take them for granted looking back on it now, and realizing that you essentially set that up at one point because you realized that was the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good observation, Katie. And there's two ways that you're going to develop systems in your business. One is by copying other agents like me and Chris. I copied James Willoughby. Like, some of the top agents in my office gave me their listing checklist, their homework packets. There were so many things, their scripts, that I just stole from them. I mean, they gave them to me, but I, started using them. I didn't learn from my own experience that I needed them, right? I learned because I was going to coaching, I was going to masterminds, I was getting mentors to help me. And that's what we're doing through Mint, is we want to be that resource for you. The second thing is I failed my way forward, right? So I didn't realize that I needed to have the address in the calendar invite exactly right so that you could just click on it on the go, until I got lost 5 times and I was freaking out in traffic because it was inefficient for me while I was driving to plug in an address into my map, right? So there were just little things that you just fail your way forward and you learn, oh crap, we need to do it this way, we need to do it that way. So like Chris said, it can be daunting, it can be overwhelming to think, I need to go implement all these things. No, you just need a couple of basic systems to get yourself going, and you'll figure it out as you go. But as long as you're staying in coaching and staying in training, you're going to constantly be learning and tweaking and getting better every day.
Yeah, at an even higher rate.
Hey, the last thing I would add is, like, there's like, I don't even know how many real estate agents now. There's like 10,000 or more of us out there. And in a sense, we are competition, and we're all fighting for the same piece of pie, if you will. But we're really not. The thing is like Tim's team, Tim's real estate team, my real estate team, any individual agent out there, even though we are competition, we're really not. And the reason I can say that is because even though, like, my team and Tim's team, we do a high volume number of deals, we are still like this tiny little sliver of market share. So that's honestly one of the biggest reasons why I was never fearful of masterminding with Tim or other agents in the Austin real estate market, because at the end of the day, you're a small, tiny sliver of a huge piece of pie, and there's plenty of business out there for you to go and get whatever you want. I mean, that's the great thing about this industry. You can work as hard as you want and get wherever you want. So don't ever think of, like, Tim and I as competition, I guess is what I'm getting at, because Tim and I, we're still fierce competitors, but we still are sharing ideas, talking about things that work. And we want to help other people, even if they aren't on our teams. We want to help other people learn and grow, and it's going to help the industry as a whole improve.
Well, yeah, I would say one of the coolest people I know in our market center now, his name's Chris Rios. And Chris Rios, I don't know, Chris probably isn't watching this, but if you are, Chris came on and spent a month in my office, learning every system and script and how we do everything that we do, and then said, Tim, I'm going to go start my own team. Will you coach me? So literally, informally, I've helped Chris grow his business. He literally took more listings than me or anybody else at the entire Southwest Market Center last month. The guy beat my team on like 6 listings in 1 month. And I sit back and I first of all, I laugh and I go, how cool is that I'm able to help that guy grow? How cool is that he actually took coaching advice and went and implemented and executed? And then number 3, I go back to my agents and I say, are you really going to let somebody who just got into real estate come in and kick your butts? Because that's what's happening. It's like it just fuels that competitive fire, and I love it. So again, like Chris said, there's so much business out there. The coolest thing about our industry is the co-opetition, right? The co-opetition, to helping each other grow and competing against each other. It's fun, and it's all about having a mindset of abundance versus a scarcity mindset, right? Being open to having a mindset of complete abundance. I mean, Chris, you and I did over 1,000 deals between the two of us last year, and we competed against each other, what, like maybe 10 or 15 times?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising. Like, I mean, I think we competed a lot more together in the beginning than we do now.
Yeah, I think so too. Crazy.
So, yeah, I mean, it just to echo what you said, like, it's all about a mindset of abundance. Like, if you're coming from a place of scarcity and fear, you know, you're not going to have the mindset of, you know, being open to new opportunities and, you know, being open to learning new things. You know, I get where some people come from, and I'm sure there's been many times in my life where I've come from a place of fear and scarcity, but every time I stretch myself outside of my comfort zone and I get comfortable with the fact like there's plenty of opportunity out there, you just got to go get it, is when it's just like opportunities fall in my lap on ways on how to grow my business.
Yeah.
So just, you know, that's probably the last thing I'd want to add about that. Do you have any other questions for us, Nick?
I think Katie's got one more question for you guys before we wrap this thing up.
So the last question that I have here is, what are some things that definitely need to happen in your business for you to be able to step out of production altogether?
That's a really good question.
It's kind of a big question. I don't know if we'll be able to get to all of it today.
What's the one thing that'll step up your business?
No, if you want to get out of production, what do you need to do?
What needs to happen? Because what I don't want to see happen to agents is they think they're there, and they hire, let's say, that listing agent, and then they just step out. But then the foundation starts to have cracks in it. I would say, what do you think it just has to be done?
Before Chris or I answer, why don't you give your answer, because you got me out of production, Katie. If you're watching this and you don't know this already, Katie was the person that actually the story goes like this. I was in the hallway of my apartment that I lived at a few years ago, and I was talking to Chris. I couldn't get on the elevator, I remember, because my signal would fade. So I'm sitting there outside the elevator talking to Chris, and he tells me how life is great because he's been out of production for 3 months, and or 6 months or whatever it was, and he's loving life. And I was so mad. You know, we didn't own the title company together. We were just friends at this point, not business partners yet. And I said, how the hell did you do that? How did you, like, I asked the question Katie just asked, what did you do? Like, what were the steps? What was the process? And he said, dude, I just realized that I'm not going to go on another listing appointment. I'm done. That's not my passion, and I'm not going to do it anymore. I have a passion in real estate, but it's not that. And so I just decided I'm done, and I'm not going to go anymore, and I made that decision, and that was that. And here I was giving all the excuses and the reasons in the world why I wasn't ready, and I had to do this, I had to do that, and, you know, if I would be giving away too much money, and I wasn't fully ready. And I finally, in that moment, realized this is, by the way, part of that co-op petition, right, where your competitor is helping push you to live a better life. So I finally just decided, he's right. I got to quit making excuses for myself and just make a decision. And that's when I called you, Katie, and I said, I want to sit down and let's talk. And I hired you about a week later, and you could pick up the story from there on the actual details of what we did.
Yeah, so, well, number one, you had a training program outlined when we met, but honestly, you were feeling it out as we went. And I just trusted you. I saw the success that you had, so I had a lot of trust in you to just go with it. But I would say you had an outline done, but it wasn't 100%, and you're constantly tweaking it. But you set expectations with me early on that you were going to be figuring this out yourself. So it didn't upset me. And then you had the ISA department up and running full tilt. You had built that out. You had done that for years, so you really were able to manage that at a high level.
Yeah, let me make a comment on that before you continue. So when you're going to leverage out, when you're going to get out of production completely, it's very, very difficult to find somebody who is going. You can find somebody as talented or more talented than you are to be able to replace you. However, it's very challenging to find one person who's going to care about your business at the level you're going to care about your business. And so if you hire somebody to do all the jobs of a listing specialist, from lead generating to lead conversion to appointments and to taking the listing and the whole way through, you did that because it's your business, and you woke up every day caring about that more than anything else in your career, and you're all in. When you go to hire somebody, the reason we build a team is to spread out the job duties, because each time you cut the job down and make it more focused and more exclusive to one thing, it's going to be that much easier to find somebody who can commit to that one job versus trying to find somebody who can do them all. So Katie said I had the ISA department down. Basically, before I was willing to bring in a listing specialist, I knew that I didn't want a listing specialist who had the job of generating leads for the business, converting them, and taking them as listings. I only wanted somebody who could go out there and convert listings. And so I took care of the lead gen part first, and then I took care of the appointment part second.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yep. So you had the ISA department down, and you still have tweaked it over time. But I guess one thing I'm trying to point out here is you didn't have it all figured out.
No.
We had to do a lot of tweaking. We had to change over people talent in the admin room, just across the board in little situations here and there. But you were able to recognize when there was an issue and just get after it as far as making the change so that we could increase our productivity. So like the admin systems and processes, they weren't there, and I know they weren't there when you were selling houses, except you just made do with it. Mm-hmm. But as you realize that more and more deals are going to be coming in, you needed to set expectations around those roles, and you needed to have crystal clear clarity about what that job looks like and whose job is it, right? Who does the agent's job and who does the admin's job, and what work goes to whom. So that we didn't really figure out until I was about 6 months in that role. And then once we did, it made a huge difference, huge.
Yeah.
So I guess my point here is that you didn't have all of it figured out, but you knew to be constantly looking at everything and asking yourself, how can I make this better? What's the one thing I can do to make this more efficient so that we can stay the course? Yep.
And if you're going to get out of production, you better hire the right person. You better hire the right person. You know, Katie, if it wasn't you and it was somebody else, there was a very high likelihood. Yeah. She's pointing to Nick because I tried to hire Nick before I hired Katie, and Nick turned me down. He gave me the big NO. And
lucky for you, I said no because I don't think I was going to do what Katie did. I wasn't selling 144 homes in my first year, so you're welcome, Tim.
You came back around. You came back around. But yeah, I mean, if it could have been somebody else that could have pulled me right back in. Katie, you were the one person that allowed our business to get to the next level, and I think with Chris too. Chris, I know some of the people that work for you, and without the right people in those places, you wouldn't have broken through either. You got to hire the right people.
Yeah, I think the best example or best analogy to use is if you've ever bought something from IKEA and you didn't follow the instructions, and when you got done assembling the piece of furniture, you had all these screws left,
yeah.
or you got a couple steps ahead and then you had to go all the way back to ground zero. So I mean, like I personally screwed this up like a million times, and so doing the right things in the right order, specific to the people you need to hire, is really important. So the sequence that I implemented that worked for me was, number one, get somebody that's going to help you on the admin side, and then leverage the marketing side. And if you leverage the marketing side, that's going to generate inbound opportunities. So leverage the marketing side for lead gen. Hire somebody that handles all of those inbound leads and is working those to convert them into appointment. So those are your first two key hires, your admin person and the guy that's working all the leads that are coming in through leveraging lead generation, whether that's prospecting on the phone or doing direct mail or advertising on a bus or billboard or whatever. So admin, the guy setting the appointment, a buyer's agent, and then your very last person to hire is a listing agent. The very last position you want to replace is yourself as a listing agent. And the way that I recommend finding a good listing agent is through your buyer agent team. What I found was I had a couple buyer agents on my team that were like very results oriented, very impatient, and just love to turn and burn deals and meet people and just go, go, go. So I basically promoted my top buyer's agent to become my listing agent to go on appointments. So that's one way you can, these are the steps you're going to have to take if you want to step outside of the business in terms of daily production.
Often,
Administrative, appointment setting, buyer agent, and then finally a listing agent.
often your listing agent kind of made a lousy buyer agent. They did a lot of deals, but they got a lot of really bad feedback from the clients because they were too impatient and moved too fast. They make that person makes an excellent listing specialist because of all the leverage the listing specialist will have in your organization to manage customer service. Their job will be to go out and win appointments, win listing consultations, and they will make an excellent listing specialist when maybe they were getting bad reviews on the buy side.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome.
Great way to look at it.
Yeah.
So how important would you say mastery is in all of these roles before you go out hiring for them?
I mean, I wouldn't even begin hiring somebody until I myself personally mastered it.
It's what makes leading the organization that much easier for you. When you've not only when you've mastered it, but when you've also been through all the challenges and struggles, not only can you help teach them, but you can empathize with them too, because you truly understand what it feels like to be in that role.
Right. Yeah. And so for certain situations, like I know, Tim, you've mentioned in the past that you never really honed in your skills doing open houses, but yet you recognize that and you bring in the MOPS team to the Heyl group to talk to them about how to get the best lead conversion out of open houses. So I guess having a constant awareness of where maybe your mastery isn't quite there, and then using your leverage and relationships with other agents and people to help you grow.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Shayna and Bobby kicked my butt at open houses. So knowing where you don't know what you're doing and being honest with your employees about it. Hey, this isn't my specialty, so what we're going to do is we're going to go find the specialists and bring them in and have them help us.
Awesome.
Yep.
Perfect. Great, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We're going to do this again.
We should turn these into in-person ones sometimes. And if there's anybody watching this, and if you guys want to meet in person, we'd love to start meeting in person and masterminding about some of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's an awesome idea. I know we've got one scheduled for Wednesday, February 17th is the next one. And then also for all you agents that are listening, we're kicking off our seminar program next month. So the weekend of February 8th, it's going to be that Tuesday on the 9th and then Wednesday on the 10th, those afternoons. Katie's going to be leading some seminars with about 20 to 30 agents. So it's going to be awesome. People are going to be bouncing ideas around, and Katie's going to be telling you guys a little bit more about how to continue to grow your business. So if you want to join those, feel free to email me or Katie. My email is nick@mintitle.com. Katie's is katie@mintitle.com. And we'll have some guest speakers every now and then. Maybe we'll let Tim and Chris pop by and show their mugs.
All right. That sounds awesome.
Everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Bye, guys.